Hello everyone, this is Kona, and thank you for tuning in for another TF2 tier list. This time, it's for 5 CP maps. Now for some reason, Valve, whenever they label their maps, they use a prefix CP for both attack defend maps and 5 CP. And I've done the attack defend maps before, the tier list for those types of maps. You can go check them out. But this one is going to be for 5 CP maps. These ones, honestly, I don't play a whole lot of 5 CP because of the map size. The maps are kind of big and the game is a little bit slow. It's really fun to watch competitive guys play on 5 CP maps because it seems like it's built for them. You know, it's very, very fun to watch competitive. But to actually play it in pubs can be a bit frustrating, so I don't play it all too often. The goal of this tier list is to try and identify the most important or the best classes for a particular type of game mode. It's very difficult sometimes to split that up into maps of a game mode because I know for maps, certain maps like cater towards certain classes, but I'm trying to make it general in terms of the game mode. The tier list is split up into 3 parts: the top tier, mid tier, and bottom tier. And like I said before, this is going to be for public servers and not for competitive. And speaking of public servers, it was hard to find CP maps, 5 CP maps for public servers. For some reason, when I went through the server browser, I couldn't find many. Like maybe only like 5 or 6 of them were actually populated. Very strange. Anyway, let's get started with my tier list for 5 CP maps. Starting with the bottom tier, we have the Sniper. I know a lot of you guys like to play Sniper, and when I went on these public servers, I found 3 snipers and 3 spies, just like normal. But I feel that Sniper doesn't contribute much to the team, at least the snipers that were playing on our team. Snipers usually like to stay back with their sniper rifle and pick off a few guys, but I've noticed that when it comes down to especially the last point, it can be a little difficult for snipers to get those key picks because there's so much going on, it's so chaotic, and you can easily get outflanked by someone like the Scout right here. By the way, I'm just going for taunt kills just for fun. Now, most snipers like to find a really good spot with a really good line of sight and stay there. I've noticed that when you play on maps like Gold Rush or something like that, something that's not 5 CP, that usually happens. The sniper will stay with his sniper rifle in one spot, a really good spot with good line of sight, and he can just pick people off all day, and that's great. But with 5 CP, the front line is moving back and forth so much because there really is no offense or defense. You're kind of switching up all the time. And the maps have so many different routes, all these different side routes that people can easily outflank the sniper. So I wouldn't say that CP maps are very ideal for the sniper. Next on the bottom tier is the Spy, and I know a lot of you guys like to play Spy, but I've noticed that when you have Spies on playing on 5 CP maps, because these maps are so huge, you're going to have to spend a lot of time running out in the open, unless you find really good places to decloak. I find that when Spies want to go for kills, they usually try to run out in the open, and that is when they're most vulnerable, because they're going to be running, and they're going to look very suspicious. So if you do play a Spy, be very cautious about where you decloak and how much you actually run. Try not to run too much because, you know, they're going to get suspicious. They're going to be like, hey, that guy's just running and not shooting or reloading or anything like that. You can use that, maybe that reload kind of graphical glitch or whatever, but most of the time, you're just going to be running there with your weapon, and they're going to be like, yeah, I think that's a spy, and they're going to spy check you. Now, on the last point of 5 CP maps, there's usually at least one engineer trying to set up. And in most cases, a spy can actually take out that engineer by himself. But if you have 2 engineers or more covering that last point, it gets a little trickier because when you try to go for the sap stab kind of thing, they have the other sentry gun covering the point as well. So as soon as you stab, unless you have the Your Eternal Reward, you're going to get called out and the sentries are going to spot you and kill you. So Spy for 1 engineer is really good on the last point, but when it gets to 2 or more, good luck. You're probably going to need to time a sap with your team's push. Pyro is next on the bottom tier, and I'll be honest, I don't play a whole lot of Pyro, so perhaps I'm just not playing Pyro right, but it seems like the Pyro's job is very specific, mainly chasing down and killing spies. The reason I say that is because Pyro has a very limited range, and pretty much every other class except Spy can outrange the Pyro, especially Heavy. Heavies are like the worst for Spies, so if you try to rush down a Heavy, you're probably going to get killed. But for some reason, there's a lot of Pyros on 5CP maps. I find a lot of them on there. They seem to be doing okay, but really their job is to spy check. Because on public servers, you know, you get the 3 snipers, 3 spies set up, so there's a lot of spies to kill for the Pyros. And I think that's why Pyros might seem good on public servers, but when you try to get in there like this, like I'm just going for the spies because I know that if I tried to rush that Heavy, he would probably kill me before I can even reach him. Like on most maps, playing Pyro effectively means not being seen until the very last second before flanking the enemy. So you're going to have to learn all these different side routes and back routes and underneath things in order to try and surprise the enemy. That's probably your best bet. Also, Pyro is pretty good for Ubering on the last point. You can just rush in there, go for those sentry guns, I guess, but there are more effective ways for taking out sentries on the last point. Moving up to the mid-tier, we have the Engineer. Now, when you think of defensive classes in TF2, you probably just think, boom, Engineer, because of his level 3 sentry gun, and that's true. The level 3 sentry is very good for playing defensively. But what's nice about CP maps, 5CP maps, is that you can actually switch up your gameplay a little bit, so you don't always have to be, you know, the Engineer with the level 3. You can see here I'm playing with the mini sentry, and it's super effective with the mini sentry because these maps are so wide open. All you have to do is put the mini sentry in, hopefully not such an obvious place. I actually kind of put it in the obvious place, and for some reason it's still working. But if you put your mini sentry in kind of a discreet place so that the enemy doesn't really know where it's coming from, you can easily get a few picks off here. And also here they have to choose between either you or the sentry gun, so it's a really nice way of playing an offensive style of Engineer. The only bad part about playing this style of Engineer is you have to keep on moving your stuff around, which can be kind of a pain. If you have a teleporter, dispenser, and stuff, all that different stuff you have to move around because the front line in 5CP maps constantly shifts. So it can be kind of frustrating to play as an offensive Engineer, but if you're on the last point, I would recommend just turtle in with a level 3 sentry, defend the last point, and once that's clear and your team is ready to push, and make sure your team is actually pushing, then you can switch off to the more offensive style of Engineer. Next on the mid-tier is the Demoman. Now when I play as Demoman, I usually try to use my grenade launcher, my pipe bomb launcher, because I kind of want to, quote, go pro and try to get like direct hits with this thing. It feels really good when you do that, because you know you actually have to hit them. But I found that these maps are so wide open, people are going to be running a lot, and you're going to have to really compensate for their movement if you're trying to hit them directly with the grenade launcher. So I actually switch up my gameplay a little bit when I play as Demoman on 5CP. I use a lot of my sticky bomb launcher, and I can set up traps directly on the point like that. Hopefully they won't see it. Maybe some scouts will run in and not see it. You can also set up sticky traps at these choke points right outside the door if you want to. And they'll most likely run right through the door and not even look up or look to the side for those sticky traps. So it's a really good way if you need like practice, like me. I need practice with my sticky bomb launcher. 5CP is a really good way to practice that. Another obvious strength of the Demoman is his ability to take out sentries. Like I've said before, you're most likely going to encounter a sentry on the last point, and if you have no spies or anyone to take them all out, you're going to have to actually make a frontal push to take out those sentries. And a really good way to do it is with an Uber Demoman. Now, one bad thing about Demoman is the fact that he doesn't do that well in, you know, mid to close quarters. I guess close quarters if you want to bust out your melee weapon and start demo knighting. But if someone tries to rush you down, all you have is your sticky bomb launcher and your grenade launcher to fight people at mid-range. So a really good strategy to deal with that is if someone is chasing you and trying to rush you down, let's say a Pyro is trying to rush you down or something like that, you can actually backpedal, just walk backwards and lay some sticky bombs right at your feet. Hopefully they'll either run away or they'll just run right over your sticky bombs and you can just detonate them like that. The heavy is next on the mid tier, and like most other maps, it's pretty much the same strategy. This jump and shoot kind of technique. Now what I like to do is I like to use corners to my advantage, not only to jump out, but I'm just kind of waiting for them. I'm kind of peeking out here, letting them know that I'm here, and I'm just kind of baiting them. I want them to step in front of me, and I can easily just take them out. Luckily I have a medic on me, and actually being a heavy on most maps, you're going to be attracting a medic if your team is lucky enough to actually have one. And so you'll be pretty set on health, and it's just all about killing people. Some of the downsides of being heavy are obviously being very slow. These 5 CP maps are gigantic, and if you're trying to keep up your momentum, it's very difficult as a heavy to try and do that because you are the slowest class out of everyone. So even though you have the most firepower, you're probably going to get to the front line last unless you stay there. We are now in the top tier of the list, and we are starting off with the Soldier. A Soldier is really good because he can rocket jump. He's actually very fast. Some people underestimate the Soldier's ability to move around because his normal walk speed is very slow. But when you rocket jump, you are actually very fast, arguably one of the fastest classes in TF2. Now, the Soldier isn't that great for Ubering and charging into the last point to take out sentries. It does work sometimes, but I think the Demoman does a little better job in that. The Soldier's main job is just to output as much damage as possible and kill the people, kill the players, basically. When you get within a certain range of the Soldier becomes extra deadly because of his rocket's blast damage. If you try to rush down a Soldier as, say, a Pyro or a Scout, you better be good at dodging or good at reflecting rockets because the blast damage will probably get you. Now, if you're playing as a Soldier and you get into a situation that is getting a little too dangerous, you can always rocket jump away to safety. There's usually a bunch of health on 5 CP maps all over the place, and you can get to them pretty quickly. You might have to sacrifice some health to rocket jump itself, but sometimes it's worth it just to stay alive, just to get away quickly. Of course, on the top tier, we have the Medic, obviously. If you notice anything about these tier lists that I'm trying to make, I put Medic on the top for a reason. It's because I consider the Medic the most important class. I don't know about you guys, but I consider the Medic the most important class of TF2, even though he's the least played and maybe even the least fun to play. Maybe that's why people don't play him, but he is so important. If you guys have been playing man versus machine mode, you would probably learn that the Medic is one of the most annoying class to deal with for the robots, because when those medic robots pop their Ubers, that's usually why people lose MVM. So I really hope MVM is teaching people that, hey, medics are important. Now on 5 CP maps, I feel it's very important to try and find someone that you trust to pocket, and that can be very difficult if you're jumping on a random server, because honestly you don't trust anyone on a random server unless you know them. But try to find someone that's worth pocketing, who is pretty good at protecting you, who understands the importance of a medic. I've been trying to pocket or find someone to pocket, and usually they would just run away and leave me out in the open. And that's probably the worst for the medic, because these maps are so wide open that other classes like spies or scouts can easily take you out if you're all alone. So try to find someone to pocket that will protect you. I try to find soldiers or heavies or something like that to protect me so that I can continue healing other people. The final class on the top tier is the Scout. Finally! The Scout, I consider the Scout top tier at something. I know we've been through a whole bunch of tier lists and the Scout hasn't been doing so well, but 5 CP maps, these maps are pretty much built for Scouts. That's why you see like 4 Scouts on a team sometimes. Now the reason Scouts are so much fun to play is probably because he's fast. He's fast and he can get around the map very quickly, so you're not spending so much time running like a heavy across the map. Finally, when you get there and you spend like 2 seconds there and die. At least with the Scout, you get to the action very quickly, and you can actually get out of the action very quickly if you need to. Now what's nice about these maps is that they're built very big, and so you can actually go in and out of the enemy's ranges pretty quickly. Like let's say you're trying to get heavy. You would go in, pick off the, get a few shots on the heavy, try to pick him off. If you can't and he's starting to zone in on you, just back away and you should be pretty safe because of that bullet drop off the heavy. Now, because of the scout's speed, he is very good for backcapping points. Going to points when the enemy is not really covering it and backcapping it very quickly. And keep in mind that the time it takes to cap these points is dependent on the actual point location. So the last point is actually faster to cap than, let's say, the middle point. This is why on the last point, if you're playing as a Demoman or something, you better have some sticky traps on that point, and you better be very cautious and alert as to when someone is actually on the point, because a scout can go in there really quick, in a matter of seconds, capture that last point. So that is my tier list for 5 CP maps. Now I'm curious as to what you guys think. What do you think is the top tier classes for 5 CP maps, or what are your favorite classes to play on 5 CP maps? So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day.